The lecture hall was filled with over 300 students from across the galaxy. They floated in their seats, some using small anti-gravity pads, others simply drifting in the low-gravity environment of the Galactic Institute of Universal Sciences. The institute orbited a small moon far from any dangerous stars, built specifically for the comfort of its many alien species. Professor stood at the center of the circular room. He was a tall, thin creature with 6 legs and compound eyes that reflected the light of the holographic display behind him. His species came from a world with only 0.2 g gravity, and like most intelligent beings in the galaxy, he was delicate. His exoskeleton was beautiful but fragile, like glass shaped into the form of an insect. "Today," Professor said, his voice translated through the universal speakers, "we discuss the fundamental law of planetary habitability, the gravity ceiling." He waved one of his thin arms, and the hologram changed to show a graph. On one side was gravity, measured in units of g. On the other side was the probability of intelligent life developing. "As you can see," continued, "no intelligent species in the known galaxy has ever evolved on a world exceeding 0.4 g gravity. This is not a coincidence. This is physics." The students watched carefully. Many of them had heard this lecture before, but was famous for his passionate delivery. "High gravity crushes developing nervous systems," the professor explained. "It prevents flight-capable species from ever taking to the sky. It makes the construction of civilization nearly impossible. Imagine trying to build a city when every stone weighs twice as much, when every step exhausts your body, when simply standing upright is a battle against the planet itself." A student near the front raised a tentacle. "Professor, what is the highest gravity world with confirmed intelligent life?" "Excellent question," replied. "The Dominion evolved on a 0.5 g world, and they are considered extreme. They are larger and stronger than most species, but even they required millions of years of evolution to adapt. Anything beyond 0.5 g is simply impossible for complex life." The door at the back of the lecture hall opened. Everyone turned to look. What they saw made no sense. A creature walked into the room, not floated, not glided, not hovered. It walked with 2 legs, each step hitting the floor with a heavy sound that echoed through the silent hall. The floor, designed for beings that weighed almost nothing, actually vibrated under its feet. The creature was wearing a simple gray uniform. It had 2 arms, 2 legs, a single head with 2 forward-facing eyes, and skin that was a warm brown color. It moved with a strange, heavy grace, as if it was completely comfortable with its own weight. Park Min looked around the lecture hall with an apologetic expression. He was 28 years old, an astrophysicist from a small country called Korea on a planet called Earth. He had traveled for 6 months to reach the institute, and he was very, very late for his first class. "I am sorry," Min said, his voice soft and polite. "I did not mean to interrupt." No one responded. 300 alien students stared at him with expressions of pure terror. Several of them had pressed themselves against the far wall. A few had fainted, their unconscious bodies floating gently in the low gravity. Professor's compound eyes blinked rapidly. You are the exchange student from the new contact world." Min nodded and smiled. He did not understand why everyone looked so scared. "Yes, sir, I am Park Min from Earth." He walked down the center aisle toward an empty seat. With each step, students moved away from him, pressing against their neighbors in desperate attempts to create distance. Min noticed this and felt confused, but he said nothing. Perhaps it was a cultural thing, he thought. Perhaps aliens needed more personal space. He found a seat and sat down. The chair, designed for creatures weighing perhaps 20 kilograms, groaned under his 70-kilogram frame, but it held. Professor stared at him for a long moment, then seemed to remember he was in the middle of a lecture. He cleared his throat, a sound like wind through dry leaves. "As I was saying, the professor continued, his voice slightly shaky. No species survives gravity above 0.5 g. The physical requirements are simply too extreme. The energy needed to move, to pump blood, to simply exist is beyond what biology can provide. Min raised his hand. Looked at him. The professor seemed to be hoping the hand would go back down. It did not. Yes, asked. I am sorry, Professor, Min said, but I think there might be a mistake. A mistake? Yes, you said no species survives 1g gravity, but Earth has 1g gravity, and I am from Earth. He paused, thinking. Actually, I think my city was at a slightly higher elevation, so maybe it was 0.99 g, but close enough. The lecture hall was silent, not the silence of attention, but the silence of complete shock. Several more students fainted. A jellyfish-like creature floating near the middle of the room spoke in a trembling voice. That cannot be correct. The translator must be malfunctioning. No, Min said, still confused by everyone's reaction. Earth is definitely 1g. That is actually how we define the unit. 1g equals Earth gravity. He looked at Professor. Is that not in your records? His thin arms were shaking. We received information about your world, but we assumed, we thought. He stopped. Show me the data on your... Min pulled out a small device and connected it to the lecture hall system. A hologram appeared, replacing his gravity chart. It showed a beautiful blue and green planet, covered in clouds, orbiting a yellow star. This is Earth, Min said. Surface gravity, 1g atmosphere, 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. Average surface temperature, 15 degrees Celsius. We have one moon which is quite large and causes our ocean tides. The hologram shifted to show more data. The students watched in growing horror. Our sun produces significant radiation, so we have a magnetic field and an ozone layer for protection. We have active plate tectonics, which causes earthquakes and volcanoes. Our weather systems include hurricanes, tornadoes, and monsoons. Professor made a small sound. It might have been a gasp or a whimper. The ocean covers about 71% of the surface, Min continued, happy to share information about his home. The water is liquid, of course, and the waves can get quite large. Some of our marine life is very interesting. We have creatures called whales that can weigh over 100,000 kilograms. Stop, whispered. Min stopped talking. He looked at the professor with concern. Had gone very pale, or at least, his exoskeleton had lost some of its color. How, the professor asked, how do you survive? Min thought about the question. It seemed strange, like asking how someone survived breathing air. We just do. I mean, we evolved there. Our bodies are adapted for it. Your bodies are adapted, repeated, his voice empty. To 1g gravity. To a world of radiation and liquid water, oceans and storms that could destroy entire cities on any civilized planet. The storms usually only destroy part of a city, Min said helpfully, and we rebuild. Professor collapsed. Several students screamed. Others rushed to help, though they stayed far away from Min. The astrophysicist from Earth sat in his groaning chair, completely bewildered. He did not understand what he had said wrong. He did not understand why a simple description of his home had caused such a reaction. The jellyfish student floated a little closer. She was trembling, her translucent body flickering with nervous bioluminescence. But curiosity had always been stronger than fear in her species. Your world, she said quietly, you call it Earth. Min nodded. I think, said, her voice barely a whisper, that in our language we would call it something else. What would you call it? Looked at him with her many small eyes, each one filled with a mixture of terror and amazement. We would call it a... Min considered this. He thought about the ocean waves he used to watch from the beach inn. He thought about the summer typhoons and the winter snow. He thought about the mountains he had climbed and the forests he had walked through. That seems a little dramatic, he said finally. Somewhere in the back of the lecture hall, another student fainted. Park Min sat alone in a white room. The walls were smooth and clean, and there was a faint humming sound from the air filters. A large window separated him from the rest of the medical wing, though he noticed that the glass was unusually thick, almost like a barrier. He had been here for 3 days. At first, he thought it was a medical checkup, standard procedure for new students, he assumed. But then he noticed that the doctors would not come into the room. They sent small robots to take his blood samples and scan his body. They watched him through the window with expressions that looked like fear. On the second day, he asked if he could leave. The doctor, a small creature covered in soft blue fur, had pressed herself against the far wall and said, "Please stay, for everyone's safety." Min did not understand. He was not sick. He was not dangerous. He was just a student who wanted to learn about the universe. On the third day came. The jellyfish-like alien floated up to the window, her body glowing with soft pink light. She was beautiful in a strange way, like a living lamp made of crystal and water. Her many eyes blinked at him through the glass. "Hello," she said. Her voice came through a speaker in the wall. We met in the lecture hall." Min stood up and walked to the window. He noticed that moved back slightly when he approached, but she did not run away. That was more than any other alien had done so far. "I remember you," he said. "You called my world a—" "Yes." His glow flickered with something that might have been embarrassment. "I am sorry if that was rude." "It was surprising," Min admitted. "But I am more confused than offended. Why is everyone so afraid of me? I have been very careful not to touch anything too hard or move too quickly." Was quiet for a moment. Then she floated a little closer to the glass. "Do you really not know?" she asked. "Know what?" "What you are." Min looked down at himself. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 body, nothing special. "I am human," he said. "From Earth. I thought I explained this." His glow shifted to a deeper color. "The medical scans of your body have been shared with the scientific community. The results are difficult to believe." "What do the scans show?" "Your bones," said. "They are incredibly dense, solid, heavy, built to support weight that would crush any of us. Your muscles are layered and powerful, designed to move your heavy body through heavy gravity. Your heart," she paused. "Your heart is like a machine. It pumps blood with such force that it would kill most species. And your blood carries so much oxygen that our doctors thought the readings were broken." Min listened with growing surprise. He had never thought of his body as special. It was just a body. Everyone on Earth had one. "And your immune system," continued. "It is terrifying. Your body has cells that hunt and destroy foreign organisms with extreme violence. You carry inside you an army of tiny soldiers that attack anything that does not belong." "That is just the immune system," Min said. "Everyone has one." "Not like yours." His voice was soft with awe. "If one of your blood cells entered my body, it would try to destroy me from the inside. Your doctors have to take special care when treating patients, yes, because your blood types can reject each other." Min nodded slowly. "Blood transfusions have to be matched. If you get the wrong type, it can be dangerous." "Your own species can poison each other with blood," said, "and you think this is normal." When she said it like that, Min had to admit it did sound a little intense. "The worst part," said, "is that you heal. Healing is bad. You heal from injuries that would kill us. Broken bones. Your body fuses them back together, cuts and wounds. Your blood creates a hard barrier and grows new skin. I watched a recording of a human surgery. The doctors cut through flesh and muscle, moved organs aside, fixed a problem, and then just closed it up. And the human survived. The human recovered. The human walked again." Min thought about his uncle who had heart surgery 2 years ago. He was back to playing golf within 6 months. Is that not normal? Did not answer the question. Instead, she asked, Do you understand now why everyone is afraid? Min looked through the thick glass at the small, glowing creature who was brave enough to talk to him. He thought about all the aliens he had seen at the Institute. They were beautiful and strange and delicate. They floated because gravity was too much for them. They had soft bodies and thin limbs and gentle hearts. And he was from a world that would crush them. I think I am beginning to understand, he said quietly. Meanwhile, in the great hall of the Galactic Council, High Chancellor watched a screen with growing horror. Was old and wise, a leader of many species, a keeper of peace for over 50 years. He had seen wars and disasters and first contacts with new species. He had never seen anything like this. The screen showed footage from the Institute. A human was jogging through a corridor, just jogging, a light exercise that Min had done on the third morning because he was bored and wanted to move his body. To the aliens watching, it looked like something from a nightmare. The human moved with impossible speed, his legs pumping, his arms swinging, his feet striking the floor with thunderous impacts. He covered distances that would take an alien minutes in mere seconds, and he was not even breathing hard. "This is exercise for them," said Admiral, a tall warrior from a militant species. "They do this for fun." "Impossible," whispered another council member. "There is more." Admiral changed the footage. Now it showed the human lifting a piece of equipment in the Institute's laboratory. It was a scanner, heavy and bulky. Two alien workers had been trying to move it with a gravity cart. Min had walked over and asked if he could help. Then he picked it up with his hands, just his hands. He carried it across the room and set it down gently, then smiled and walked away. The alien workers had stood frozen for 10 minutes after he left. "The weight of that scanner," Admiral said, "is approximately 80 kilograms in standard gravity." He lifted it like it was nothing. "What is their military like?" asked Chancellor. His voice was tired. Admiral accessed another file. This one came from Earth's own historical database, shared during the first contact negotiations. The Council watched in silence as images filled the screen. Soldiers running across battlefields, tanks rolling through cities, ships cutting through stormy seas, planes screaming through a sky filled with clouds and lightning, and everywhere humans, fighting, dying, and fighting again. War after war after war, stretching back through thousands of years of history. "They fight each other," Admiral said. "They always have. Not over territory or resources, though sometimes that too. They fight over ideas, over beliefs, over pride." "They are predators," said a council member, her voice shaking. "Worse than predators," Admiral replied. "They are persistent hunters. On Earth, before they developed technology, they would chase prey animals for hours, not with speed but with endurance. They would walk after their food until it collapsed from exhaustion. They are not fast. They are not strong compared to their world's other predators, but they never stop. They never give up. They just keep going until they win." Chancellor closed his eyes. "What do we do?" The council erupted in arguments. Some wanted to destroy Earth before the humans could become a threat. Others wanted to quarantine the entire sector. A few suggested negotiation, alliance, some way to keep the humans peaceful. "We cannot destroy them," said one elderly council member. "They have nuclear weapons. They have survived their own attempts to destroy themselves. They are too strong." "Then we contain them," Admiral said. "We keep them isolated. We never let them know how weak we are compared to them. We smile and trade and pretend we are equals, while we pray they never realize they could conquer us all." Chancellor opened his eyes and looked at the frozen image on the screen. It showed Min in the lecture hall, his hand raised, his expression curious and friendly. "He does not look like a conqueror," the Chancellor said softly. "Neither did we," Admiral replied, "before we conquered our first neighbor." The council fell silent. They had no answer. They had only fear. And somewhere in the medical wing of the Institute, Park Min was learning a game that was teaching him through the glass barrier. It was a simple game, meant for children, involving patterns of colored lights. Min was losing badly and was glowing with amusement. Neither of them knew that the fate of humanity was being debated in the halls of power. Neither of them knew that fear and friendship would soon collide. Park Min walked through the corridors of the Institute wearing heavy boots and thick gloves. The boots had gravity dampeners built into them, making his steps lighter and quieter. The gloves had sensors that would beep if he applied too much pressure to anything. He felt like he was wrapped in safety equipment, but the aliens around him seemed to relax slightly when they saw his gear. It had been 2 weeks since he left quarantine. Floated beside him, acting as his unofficial guide and translator. She was the only one who would willingly stay close to him, and Min was grateful for her friendship. "Your next class is materials science," said. "Professor Kell is teaching today. He is nervous about you, but he promised to be professional." "I will be careful," Min said. He had learned to say this often. It seemed to help. The classroom was smaller than the main lecture hall, with only about 30 students. When Min entered, everyone moved to the far side of the room. He pretended not to notice and sat in the reinforced chair that had been installed just for him. Professor Kell was a tall, thin creature with 4 arms and a long neck. His species had evolved on a world with only 0.15 G, and he moved like a dancer, graceful and light. He looked at Min with obvious discomfort, but began his lecture anyway. "Today we discuss construction materials across different gravity environments," Professor Kell said. "The fundamental challenge of architecture is supporting weight. In low gravity, we can use light materials such as aerogel foams and carbon lattices. But in higher gravity environments, we need stronger solutions." He showed a hologram of a building made from thin, delicate beams. "This is a typical structure on a 0.2 G world. The materials weigh almost nothing. A single worker can carry an entire wall section." Min raised his hand. Professor Kell hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, Student Park. What materials do you use for higher gravity worlds, like the—" The professor seemed surprised by the reasonable question. "The use compressed mineral alloys, very dense and strong. Their buildings require heavy machinery to construct. It is considered extremely difficult engineering." Min nodded. "On Earth we use steel and concrete." The class went silent. Professor Kell's 4 arms trembled slightly. "Steel," the professor repeated. "You build with metal." "Yes, and stone sometimes. Older buildings were made from large blocks of cut stone. Some of them are thousands of years old and still standing." A student in the back made a frightened sound. "How do you lift the materials?" Professor Kell asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Min thought about the construction workers he had seen back home. "Workers carry some of it. For bigger pieces, we use cranes and trucks, but a lot of the smaller work is done by hand. Bricklayers, for example. They lift and place bricks one by one all day long." "All day," the professor repeated. "Yes, it is hard work, but many people do it." Professor Kell sat down heavily in his floating chair. He seemed to need a moment to process this information. Leaned close to Min and whispered, "Perhaps do not mention any more construction methods." Min nodded, understanding now that even normal things from Earth could shock the aliens. After class, Min walked through the Institute gardens. The plants here were beautiful and strange, growing in spirals and curves that would be impossible in Earth gravity. Flowers floated on thin stems, their petals drifting like colored clouds. "It is very peaceful here," Min said. "Earth is not peaceful?" asked. Min considered the question. "It has peaceful places, but also storms and earthquakes and volcanoes. The weather can be violent sometimes." "What is a storm like on Earth?" Min described typhoons and hurricanes. He talked about winds that could tear apart buildings and waves that could sink ships. He mentioned lightning, the sudden electricity from the sky that could kill instantly. When he finished, his glow had turned a pale, worried color. "And you go outside during these storms?" she asked. "Not usually. We stay inside and wait for them to pass, but sometimes people have to work during storms. Emergency services mostly. Your species has individuals who run toward danger." Min smiled. "We call them heroes." Was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, "What is an ocean like?" Min spent the next hour describing the sea. He talked about waves that crashed against the shore, about tides that rose and fell with the moon, about creatures that lived in the deep water. He described swimming, the act of moving through liquid water using only body movement. "You go into the water," was horrified, "voluntarily. Many people enjoy it. I used to swim at the beach near my home when I was young." "But you could drown." "Yes," Min admitted, "but it is fun." His body flickered with conflicting colors. She did not understand fun that included the risk of death. Meanwhile on Earth, a new ship was being prepared. Hannah stood in the launch facility, reading through her mission briefing for the 10th time. She was 32 years old, who had spent her career studying extreme life forms on Earth. When the call came for a second human representative to the galactic community, she had volunteered immediately. Standing beside her was Lieutenant Ho. He was older, 41, with short gray hair and calm eyes. He had served in the military for 20 years and had been specifically chosen for this mission because of his discipline and control. If humans were seen as dangerous, they needed someone who could demonstrate that humans could also be careful and precise. "The briefing says they are afraid of us," Hannah said. "All of them, the entire galaxy." Ho nodded. "Good." Hannah looked at him with surprise. "Good. Fear means respect. Fear means they will not underestimate us. Fear means they will think twice before trying to hurt us." "I would prefer friendship to fear," Hannah replied. Ho's expression softened slightly. "So would I, but we can build friendship on a foundation of respect. We cannot build it on a foundation of weakness." The ship launched 3 days later. The journey took 4 months. When Hannah and Ho arrived at the Institute, they found Min waiting for them at the docking bay. "You look well," Hannah said, hugging him carefully. She had been warned about the strength limiters and pressure-sensitive gloves. "I have made a friend," Min said, gesturing to who floated nearby. "And I have learned a lot, but I am glad you are here. It was lonely being the only human." Ho looked around the docking bay. He noticed how the alien workers stayed far away from them. He noticed the reinforced floor where they were standing. He noticed the security cameras tracking their every movement. "They are watching us," he said quietly. "Always," Min confirmed. "I think they are afraid we might break something." "Then we must show them. We are careful with things we do not wish to break." Ho stepped forward and bowed deeply toward the alien workers. It was a formal bow, respectful and controlled. The aliens watched with confusion, not understanding the gesture but sensing its meaning. Hannah smiled. Perhaps fear and friendship could exist together after all. The next day, during a routine physical demonstration for the scientific staff, Min made a mistake. A small drone was used to test reaction times. It would fly toward a student, and the student would try to catch it. Most aliens could barely track its movement with their eyes. Catching it was considered impossible. The drone flew toward Min without thinking. He reached out and grabbed it from the air. The drone crumpled in his hand like paper. Min stared at the broken machine with horror. He had not meant to damage it. His instincts had simply reacted, his hand closing with a strength that seemed normal to him, but was devastating to the delicate drone. "I am sorry," he said, looking at the shocked scientists. "I did not mean to break it." No one responded. They were all staring at his hand, at the crushed metal and sparking wires. They were all thinking the same thing. What would happen if he closed that hand around one of them? The footage of the incident spread across the galactic network within hours. For the first time, the wider galaxy saw what human reflexes looked like. The comments were filled with terror, but a very few, were filled with something else. Hope. If these humans were so strong, so fast, so indestructible, then perhaps they could help. Perhaps they could protect. On the edge of Council space, the Dominion was gathering its fleet. And war was coming. The Galactic Council chamber was the largest room men had ever seen. It was a massive sphere, with seats floating at every level, filled with representatives from hundreds of species. Light came from everywhere and nowhere, soft and golden, designed to be comfortable for all types of eyes. Min stood at the center of the sphere, on a small platform that held him and his two fellow humans. Hana was on his left, dressed in formal clothes and looking calm despite the thousands of alien eyes watching her. Lieutenant Ho was on his right, standing straight and still like a statue carved from stone. High Chancellor floated in the highest seat, looking down at them with ancient, tired eyes. He was older than any being Min had ever seen, his body wrapped in flowing robes that hid his frail form. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber. Humans of Earth, you have come to our galaxy seeking friendship and knowledge. We have welcomed you, but we must speak honestly. Many here are afraid. Min felt Hana tense beside him. He understood the weight of this moment. Everything they said now would shape the future of humanity among the stars. We understand the fear, Hana replied. Her voice was clear and strong. We have seen how different we are. We know that our bodies are strange to you, that our world seems harsh and violent. We did not choose to be this way. We evolved to survive on Earth, just as you evolved to survive on your worlds. Admiral spoke from her floating seat. She was tall and sharp, with hard eyes that had seen many battles. Your bodies are weapons. Your reflexes are faster than combat drones. Your strength could tear through our strongest metals. How can we trust that you will not use these abilities against us? Ho stepped forward. Every eye in the chamber tracked his movement, and several representatives reached for hidden weapons. He stopped and held up his hands, showing that they were empty. I am a soldier, he said. His voice was calm and low. I have trained my body for combat since I was young. I have fought in wars. I have killed enemies. I will not lie to you about what I am. The chamber was silent. Fear hung in the air like a cold fog. But I am also a protector, Ho continued. I fought not because I enjoyed violence, but because there were people who needed to be kept safe. Families, children, innocent lives. That is why humans fight, not for glory or conquest. We fight to protect what we love. Hana stepped forward to stand beside him. We know what it means to be afraid. On Earth, we have faced predators larger than us, disasters that destroyed our cities and diseases that killed millions. We have faced our own violence, our own wars, our own darkest nature, and we survived. We built civilizations. We reached for the stars. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many representatives as she could. We came here not because we wanted to conquer. We came because we were lonely. For all of our history, we looked up at the stars and wondered if anyone else was out there. We dreamed of meeting other minds, other hearts, other souls who could understand us. When we finally discovered that we were not alone, we felt joy. Pure, overwhelming joy. Her voice cracked slightly. We do not want you to fear us. We want you to know us. Chancellor was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, what would you do if we rejected you? If we sent you back to your world and closed our borders? Min spoke for the first time. His voice was softer than the others, gentle and a little sad. We would be hurt, he said honestly. We would feel rejected and alone, but we would not attack you. We would not force our way in. We would go home and try again, differently, hoping that someday you would give us another chance. You would not strike at us in anger, Admiral demanded. No, Min shook his head. We are not monsters, we are just people. Different from you, yes. Stronger and heavier and built for a harder world, but still people. We feel love and fear and hope and sadness just like you." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Some voices were angry, some were frightened, and some were thoughtful. Chancellor raised a hand and the room fell silent. "I believe," the Chancellor said slowly, "that you are sincere. I have lived a long time and I have learned to sense when someone speaks from the heart. You speak from the heart." Hannah felt tears forming in her eyes. She blinked them away quickly. "But belief is not enough," the Chancellor continued. "Fear does not die so easily. It will take time for our peoples to trust each other. It will take—" An alarm screamed through the chamber. Every light turned red. Emergency screens appeared throughout the sphere, showing maps and data and warnings in a dozen languages. Chancellor's face went pale as he read the incoming information. "The Dominion," he said, his voice hollow. "They have entered Council space with their full fleet." Admiral was already shouting orders. "All military representatives, report to your commands. Emergency protocols are now in effect." "What is the Dominion?" Min asked, confused by the sudden chaos. Appeared at the edge of the platform, having somehow entered the chamber during the confusion. "They are conquerors," she said, her glow flickering with fear. "They have been attacking border worlds for generations. Their species evolved on a high-gravity world, which makes them stronger than most of us. They believe that strength gives them the right to rule." Hannah's eyes narrowed. "How high gravity?" 0.5 G, replied. "They are considered the heaviest species in the known galaxy." Ho made a sound that might have been a laugh. Everyone looked at him. 0.5 G, he repeated, half of Earth. The realization spread through the chamber like a wave. Representatives who had been panicking stopped and turned to look at the three humans. Chancellor stared at them with new understanding. "Your world is twice as heavy as theirs," he said. Ho nodded. "They evolved on a world that we would consider light, easy, almost comfortable. You could fight them. If necessary." Ho's voice was flat, professional. "We could fight them." A new voice cut through the chamber. It came from the emergency broadcast, a harsh and arrogant tone that needed no translation. "This is Commander of the Dominion. We claim this space by right of conquest. Surrender all military assets and prepare for occupation. You have one standard day to comply. Resistance will be met with destruction." The message ended. Silence filled the chamber. Admiral spoke, her voice bitter with defeat. "We have no fleet capable of stopping them. Our military was designed for peacekeeping, not war. They have been preparing for this invasion for decades." Chancellor closed his eyes. "Then we must surrender to protect our people from destruction." "No." Everyone looked at Ho. He had stepped to the edge of the platform, looking up at the screens showing the fleet. His eyes were calm and cold, the eyes of a soldier assessing a battlefield. "Show me your enemy," he said. "Show me their numbers, their weapons, their tactics. Show me everything you have on them." "What can you do?" Admiral demanded. "You are three people against an entire fleet." Ho smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of something dangerous. "We are three people," he agreed. "But there are more humans on Earth, and we protect our friends." Min stepped forward to stand beside Ho. He was scared, but he remembered what he had said about heroes, people who run toward danger. Hannah took her place on Ho's other side. Her fear had transformed into determination. Three humans stood before the Galactic Council. Behind them, the entire galaxy waited. Before them, war approached. And for the first time since the alarm sounded, Chancellor felt something he had not expected. Hope. The message reached Earth in 3 hours. By the 5th hour, a decision had been made. By the 10th hour, ships were launching. Lieutenant Ho stood on the bridge of the Council flagship, watching the tactical display with patient eyes. Beside him, Admiral gave orders to her officers, trying to organize the scattered defensive fleet into something that could at least slow the advance. "We cannot win," said quietly so that only Ho could hear. "Our ships are faster, but their weapons are stronger. Our shields cannot hold against their cannons." "You will not have to win," Ho replied. "You only have to delay, keep them busy, make them think you are the main threat." "And what will you do?" Ho pointed at the tactical display. A small colony world called was directly in the fleet's path. "I will be there." "Has no military value. It is just a farming colony." "Exactly. They will attack it to show their power, to make an example. And when they land their soldiers to occupy the colony, we will be waiting." Looked at him with confusion. "You, against their army." "Not just me." Ho checked his communication device. "Reinforcements are coming." 4 days later, the human ships arrived. They were not warships. Earth did not have warships yet, not the kind designed for space battles. Instead, they were transport vessels, quickly modified for the journey. Inside them were 300 human volunteers, soldiers, emergency responders, doctors, and engineers. All of them had stepped forward when they heard that the galaxy needed help. The fleet had reached by the time the humans arrived. Massive warships hung in orbit, bombarding the surface with precision strikes. Down below, the colony burned. Bird-like aliens ran through the streets, trying to reach shelters that could not protect them from the falling fire. The first human landed in the middle of the chaos. Ho was the first to step out. He wore heavy armor and carried weapons designed for Earth gravity. Behind him came the soldiers, spreading out in perfect formation, moving toward the sound of screaming. A soldier saw them and laughed. They were large by galactic standards, over 2 meters tall, with thick limbs and heavy armor built into their scales. They had conquered dozens of worlds because no one could match their strength. They expected these strange new beings to be just as easy to crush. The soldier charged at Ho, raising a weapon designed to crack open fortified bunkers. Ho caught the weapon mid-swing, stopped it completely. The eyes went wide with shock. "Your world is 0.5 G, Ho said calmly. "Mine is 1 G. You are not the strong ones here." He twisted the weapon out of his hands and threw it aside. Then he pushed the soldier back with one hand. The flew through the air and crashed into a wall 5 meters away. For a moment nothing happened. Then the soldier stood up, stared at Ho with pure terror and ran. Across the colony, similar scenes were playing out. Soldiers who had never experienced defeat found themselves facing creatures from a nightmare. The humans moved faster than anything they had seen. They lifted debris that should have been too heavy. They shrugged off blows that should have broken bones. But the humans did not kill unless they had to. Ho had given strict orders. They were here to protect, not to conquer. Every soldier was given the chance to surrender. Many of them took it. Meanwhile, Park Min and Hana were on the other side of the colony, doing different work. A building had collapsed during the bombardment. Dozens of natives were trapped inside, crying for help. The local rescue teams had tried to reach them, but the rubble was too heavy. Their machines could not lift the broken beams and shattered walls. Min looked at the wreckage and took off his strength-limiting gloves. "What are you doing?" a rescue worker asked, terrified. "Helping," Min said simply. He walked to the edge of the rubble and found a metal beam half buried in stone. It weighed perhaps 200 kilograms. He grabbed it with both hands and pulled. The metal groaned, bent, and came free. The rescue workers stared. Hana joined him, climbing into the wreckage and lifting pieces of wall that No could have moved. They worked together, carefully removing debris layer by layer, always listening for sounds of survivors. "Here," Hana called out. She had found a pocket in the rubble, a small space where 3 young children had been protected by a fallen door. They looked up at her with huge, frightened eyes. "It is okay," she said softly, kneeling down to their level. "We are here to help. Can you walk?" The oldest child nodded slowly. She was shaking, but she reached out and took Hana's offered hand. Hana lifted the child out of the rubble as gently as she would have lifted a soap bubble. The child weighed almost nothing to her, just a few kilograms of feathers and thin bones, but she held her like she was the most precious thing in the universe. Because she was. Word spread through the colony. The strange, heavy creatures from the death world were saving people. They were pulling survivors from collapsed buildings. They were fighting the invaders and winning. They were not conquering. They were not destroying. They were protecting. By the end of the day, the ground forces had retreated. Their commander could not understand what was happening. His best soldiers were being defeated by a species that should not exist. His invasion was falling apart. In orbit, the fleet received a new transmission. It was broadcast on all channels for everyone to hear. Ho stood in the middle of the ruined colony, surrounded by freed prisoners and rescued survivors. His armor was dented and dirty, but his voice was clear. "This is Lieutenant Ho of Earth. To the Dominion, your ground forces have been defeated. Your occupation of is over. You will withdraw from Council space immediately, or you will face the full strength of humanity." There was a long silence. Then the commander's voice came through, shaking with rage. "What kind of monsters are you? What kind of creatures live on your world?" Ho looked around at the colonists he had saved. At Hana, covered in dust and smiling as she handed out medical supplies. At Min, who was teaching a group of children how to fold paper into little birds. At the human soldiers helping to rebuild fallen walls. "We are not monsters," he said. "We are human and we protect our friends." The fleet began to retreat. Across the galaxy, the transmission played on every screen. Billions of aliens watched the humans of Earth stand among the ruins of a colony they had saved. They saw the rescued children clinging to the heavy creatures from the. They heard the words that would change everything. "We are not monsters, we are human, and we protect our friends." On the surface of, a young child approached Min. She was small and covered in golden feathers, with bright eyes that had seen too much violence for her age. In her hands, she held one of the paper birds he had made. "Thank you," she said in her own language. "Thank you for coming." Min knelt down to her level, moving slowly so he would not scare her. "You are welcome," he said. "We are sorry we did not come sooner." The child reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were tiny and delicate against his rough human skin. "You came," she said. "That is enough." And for the first time since he left Earth, Park Min cried.